All right, so got her back together here. A few things about the reassembly. First off, as I indicated before, I was able to pull this loom up a little bit tighter around so we're not leaving too much of the wire exposed. Of course, I did mention this molded two conductor wire here, some factory molded, so I can't do anything with that. And honestly, I don't think it's worth wrapping loom around. Loom also presents its own issues. Those little corrugations tend to collect dust and they're a motherfucker to clean. So I'll probably just leave this the way it is. I think it's fun. Secondly, I mentioned yesterday the rubber isolation that's built into this mount, and that seems actually very effective. I'm quite surprised at how well that works, and that's, somebody took some time to engineer that, and that's, that's a value add, I would say, meaning that the manufacturer could have just put solid plugs back there, and you'd simply screw it together and it would vibrate with the rest of the bike. In all honesty, it'd probably be fine. I didn't take this case apart to look at the circuitry and look at the board. That'll tell you a lot about its longevity in terms of the vibration and abuse, but I didn't want to break into the seals, and it is what it is, right? It's less than 200 bucks. I'll hope it works forever, but I think I think they're coming out of China. So that tells you a little bit about the quality. I routed the harness down with all the other wires and cables here, on the inside, and then ultimately I ended up having to cross over in here, and I tucked it under as much as I could. And then that harness that comes out of the O2 sensor, and you can't see any of this now because like I said, I've got it back together. The harness out of the O2 sensor comes up, in this area right here, and so I had the rest of the harness come down and meet, and right under the shifter here, about where this crack is at, offset inset about 3 inches or so is the frame rail, and it provided a nice place to put that little Molex plug, that 5-wire plug, off the O2 sensor, and just secure all that extra length that was provided in the kit. Something I didn't notice, and I had done it for a reason, you can see I'm offset to the left here. That's going to drive me nuts, so I'll end up fixing that. For now it's fine. And the reason for it is because I was using self-tapping screws, I want to minimize the amount of holes in that ROX plate, just in case, for this exact reason, I'm going to move it, and one hole in there that's unused is better than two. So I'll have to move it over now. Where it's at now allowed for that bracket, this adjustable bracket on the back here, to be set up against the factory display unit housing in a way that it kind of binds it in there. So that's why one screw is able to work in this position. When I move it over to center it, that's no longer going to be adequate, and I'll have to do 2 screws. But that's all right, it's not a big deal. And down the road, if I ever pull it off for any reason, I'm sure I can source another plate from ROX, or as we've seen recently, Brad, Red Rocket on the board, he's getting pretty nifty with this stuff too, so he could probably help me out in fabbing one up if I had to. So a little bit about the operation. I haven't set either the lean or over lean or over rich alarms. I'm hesitant to, at least in the beginning here, until I see how this thing works, get it out for a day. And the reason for that is because when it goes into alarm, you're no longer getting the actual value of, whether you're over lean or over rich. That value goes away, and it goes into an alarm mode. And I'd rather at this point know what that alarm is, or know what the numbers are, to see what kind of variation this meter has under normal operation. So now that it's all hooked up, we'll turn it on. standard operation is it goes through a heat cycle and it counts up to I think 99, and then in theory the sensor is ready to be fired up. I don't know if this is a critical operation every time. You can see there it went to 22 something, 23 something, and now it's reading low. It's saying that the air fuel mixture is low simply because the bike's off and there's not enough fuel in there to read. Trying not to get the glare from the lights here. So, and what this is reading is parts air per million to 1 part fuel. So a lower number is rich, a higher number is lean. And when you get up, like I said yesterday, around 12.8, that's about where you want to be riding. Anything more than that's going to be 12.8, 13.2. Anything above 13.2 is going to be considered kind of lean, and adversely, anything under 12.8 is a little rich. These meters, they do jump around by nature, so there's a lot of erroneous data that you need to kind of discard. And really, because these programmers are concentrated in really 3 areas, right? You've got your idle and just off idle, you've got your mid-range, and then you've got essentially wide open throttle. So those are kind of the areas that you want to be adjusting in. And while you do want to be under load, you don't want to be varying the throttle when you're trying to tune any one of those 3 positions, because those numbers are going to be bouncing around, and it might be, depending on how this meter works, it might bounce around too much that you can't even decipher the number. This one I did fire it up, and we'll do that here in a second. I won't be able to talk to you, but you'll see that the numbers will start low, and as it starts to warm up, it's gonna center somewhere around 12.8. And that is actually, I'm delighted to see, because that means the shop, when they put the sniffer in the tailpipe and they did their tuning, that it was fairly accurate. And if there was any delta in those numbers from where the factory should have set it to what I was seeing on this display, it would be, I wouldn't say cause for concern, but I would have to speculate that their sniffer wasn't in far enough to get a good reading, and it was running a little bit lean or reading lean. So anyways, here we go. So as you can see, this is landed right about 12.2, 12.4. That's pretty good for just an idle. I think that's probably dialed in. And I'll just come off of idle. It gets closer to 13 and 13.2. So honestly, that setting looks good, and I was actually quite a bit surprised, because the recommended setting from the manufacturer, I think, was 4 or 4.5 for this setting. It wasn't 2.5. So I don't think I ever would have guessed to go down in that setting, because as we know, as it's been well documented, these bikes are running rich, mostly in the idle circuit. They're running lean in the idle circuit. So I would have expected to have to compensate for that more. But again, it goes to show you here at 6,500 feet, your recommended manufacturer settings aren't going to be right for everyone, and they're not going to be right for every bike. And not to mention, any difference in exhaust restriction or lack thereof, or the same adversely on the intake air filter restriction or lack thereof. So K&N air filter is probably going to tune a little bit different than a uni filter. So all these things it's good info, right? And anything above in that mid-range, I'm going to expect now, after seeing the idle circuit, the way it was tuned from the shop, I'm going to expect everything to be good all the way up, but I'll know going forward. And more importantly, I'm going to know, when we go out to Moab, maybe later this year, that's at 4,000 feet. And as I mentioned yesterday, I'm riding, 6,000, 6,500 up to, as high as 13,000. So, I think, I guess I'm saying that, I think there's a case to be made for not guessing and just knowing where you're at. At any rate, this meter, this one fluctuates less than the Innovate one that I had, but the Innovate one was, I bought that meter when it first came out, 10 years ago. And that's when AF meters were running, for a small one like this, you could pay $1,000. So, thank God for technology and advancements. And this one is actually functioning better than the larger Innovate LM1, I think it was, that I had. So that's it. I don't know how to edit videos, so I'm not going to edit any of this, and it's probably going to be in a 4 or 5 part series, and I'll post it up on GZ. And like I said, if anyone cares, here's a tutorial.